there, I'm Cheyenne.
And I'm Juan.
And we are
Down with the Dominguezes.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Cheyenne Dominguez, and I am here with
Juan Dominguez.
Hi. All right, so we just completed week 10 of coronavirus quarantine, sort of, as things begin to open, and we're about to go into week 11, and it's also Memorial Day weekend coming up.
It is indeed.
Yeah. All right, so in keeping with our history, the last 9 or 10 weeks, we want to dedicate this episode to all of the soldiers we have lost who have fought for our freedom, because that's what Memorial Day is about.
The ultimate sacrifice, without a doubt.
Sacrifice. And so we're thinking of those who lost loved ones, whether that was a grandparent, an uncle, a parent, a sibling, a child. We're thinking of you, a spouse. We're thinking of you, and we dedicate this episode to them, to those who are gone. And so with that, we wanted to let Juan share a few stories of his time in the service, some funny, some sad. So you might have some mixed emotions. I know I always do when you share stories of your time overseas. But why don't you just share with everyone when you served?
Sure. So I graduated from West Point in 1989, and I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Army as an infantry man. And, we called them infantrymen back there because they were all men, and today they're not. So an infantry person. And, we were basically the ground soldiers, right? It's a very...
And this was a job you chose, but
this was a job I chose. I figured
I don't think I would choose that, but you're braver than I am.
I think a lot of people thought I was crazy, but it was well worth it. And so I served from 1989 to 1994, and probably 16 months after I graduated college, our unit got deployed to the Persian Gulf for what started as Operation Desert Shield and eventually became Operation Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm. So 16 months after graduation, you are heading to the Middle East.
Wet behind the ears, and everyone's scared and unsure what's going to happen. And so, yes, I was in charge of 40 soldiers and a whole bunch of equipment, and trying to be a leader when you're just trying to, I think, figure your way out through life. So that was interesting.
No pressure. No pressure at all.
No pressure.
So why don't you share that story about? We call it Lost at the Border. So why don't you tell everyone about Lost at the Border? I like this.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing with these stories here is, I was by no means a hero, and there are people that have fought for longer periods of time and in much tougher combat situations. But, these are my stories, and I thought it'd be interesting to share. So we had lost on the border. So
what border are we talking
about? Talking about
let's set the stage.
The Iraqi border, border. So we'd been somewhere in Saudi Arabia for the better part of 6 months. And as it became apparent that we would have to force Saddam Hussein and the bad guys out of Kuwait, we started moving closer to the border to get ready for what was ultimately Operation Desert Storm. And so we're on the Iraqi border, and we were there for a couple of days, getting our bearings, getting ready before going over and starting the ground offensive. And so it was the first evening, and I had done this 1,000 times, which is you put all of your men and all your vehicles in a defensive position, and they're probably spread out about 100 yards each or so from, you look to your right, you look to your left, and there's another vehicle with your folks on there. It was starting to get dusk. And so I do the rounds at night, going to check how everyone's doing, and just walk between all of the vehicles and see how the men are doing, make sure their defensive positions are all set up. And just before I left the vehicle that night, one of my soldiers on my vehicle, I think it was Corporal Bassanello, said, "Sir," or LT, as they called me, "LT, do you think you need some night vision goggles?" I said, "No, I think we'll be okay." And because, again, I'd done this 100 times before. I started walking, and it was one of those nights where there's no moon. And I, was thinking, maybe I should have taken those.
There's no city lights.
No city lights where we were. And it was cold. It was warm in Saudi Arabia for that summer, really hot actually, but it was cold on the Iraqi border. And I'm walking and I'm like, I should have got here by now. I look around, I can't see anything. And the day before, another person had done a similar thing in another unit and had been lost all night. They found him naked without his weapon, without his equipment, because he'd gotten disoriented and dehydrated. And after walking around 12 hours in a tense situation, I guess he just panicked.
So you're out to check on your soldiers. You declined the night vision.
In typical arrogant Dominguez fashion. And now I'm lost.
And now you've realized you must have gone wrong.
Not only have I gone wrong, but if you look the other way, the enemy's out there somewhere.
Sure.
And so now you're
lost. You know the enemy's there.
You know they're there somewhere. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to find my bearings? And so I did the only thing that came to mind, which was I started yelling, help, help, like a little mouse, help.
Like a little mouse in the desert?
Like a little mouse in the desert, hoping that the bad guys didn't hear and that my guys heard. And all of a sudden someone goes,
"Was this in the tactical training manual?"
This is in no manual. And they were like, LT, is that you? And I was like, yeah, it's me. And they're like, are you lost? I go, of course I'm not lost.
What are you
talking about? I'm just checking the perimeter, just checking the defense. So
lesson learned: if someone offers you night vision goggles,
take them every
sundown.
At sundown. Take them every time. Take them every time. So yeah, that was my introduction, and gosh, that was well, everyone gets a good kick out of that one. So
you got lucky there, didn't you?
I got really lucky, and that was a good joke. Kind of after the war ended, my troops would always remind me about LT lost on the border. So.
Lost on the border.
Yep.
So tell everyone about that time. There was another story you shared with me where you had to fire some warning shots.
Well, so
and that got interesting.
You know, I call that kind of warning shots is that little story. But before that happened, we had deployed over the border and we drove really for like 2.5 days. Our unit was in charge of the flank. I think they called it the sweep or the big flank or the hook. And so while certain American units were fighting the Iraqis kind of in a central position, we did a sweeping maneuver to the left, like a post pattern. And our job was to cut off the Republican guards trying to flee back to Baghdad. And so for 2.5 days, we really didn't see anything other than the great job that the Air Force and our artillery units blowing up every enemy suspected location on the way to our objective, and blow it up they did. It was just, kind of mass vehicle and other things that we won't get into along the way. So the first night that we actually made contact with the enemy was after like 2.5 days of driving. It was in the evening, and I remember when we shoot our bullets, there's kind of like orange tracers, so the leaders can direct where the fire should go. And all of a sudden, some firing starts, and we heard that a couple of our scouts had been shot, and everyone's really, really tense. And all of a sudden I see green tracers coming back kind of in the other direction. And I said to one of my sergeants, I was like, what's the green tracers? He's like, sir, that would be the enemy.
Shooting at you.
The enemy shooting at us. And I was like, I don't remember green tracers being in any manual either. But as you could imagine, my profile from 6 foot shrunk to about 3 foot in my vehicle as I kind of peered over the horizon, scared for my life and everyone else's life. And I just kind of reverted back and said, I put on this persona of nothing bad's going to happen to me, just to kind of function. And that's how I was able to kind of lead out of that for the rest of the thing. Keep moving forward, right? And so until you're hit, you're not hit. And that's the best way to describe it. So, we kind of get through that battle, and the next day we're guarding a highway in Iraq, and I call it, this is warning shots. And, there was a lot of kind of kamikaze missions going on where, the enemy would come at you with vehicles at high speed, kind of like you see now.
A lot of unknowns.
Yeah, kind of like the terrorist actions that you see now, right?
Right.
So any enemy vehicle coming in your direction, you had to, you had to be ready. Got to be ready. And however, we were capturing a lot of enemy vehicles and bringing them back to certain locations. So the fog of war, you were supposed to have an orange panel on the front of any captured vehicles if you were in possession of them.
If you captured an enemy vehicle in possession of it, you put this special
orange panel called a VS-17 panel, if I recall. Yep.
To signal to your friendlies.
Right? And we're moving and, don't shoot. So all of a sudden we see like I think it's a troop carrying truck. It's called a 2.5 ton or a 5 ton. And it's packed with what looked like Iraqis in the back. And it's coming down this road at a high rate of speed. And my driver kind of shimmied off of the road for a second. I said, "Hey, get back on the road." And he's like, "Sir, they're coming." Like, "Get back on the road." So we get back on the road. That's our job. And we're kind of blocking this road. And I let my gunner know, "Hey, let's not fire on this directly. Let's fire a couple warning shots over to
the side.
Yeah, to our right, their left, to the side, to slow it down and let them know we mean business." So he fires this Mark 19 grenade launcher down, and just close enough that they would saw the dirt flying up, but far enough that, we wouldn't hit it. And the vehicle comes to a halt, and they're like, "Sir, what should we do?" And I'm like, "I got this." So I, jump out of the vehicle and I start walking down the road to kind of investigate. And a person gets off of that truck and starts walking down our road. And I go, "Yeah, it kind of looks like me." And, and they're in the same uniform as us. I'm like, "What's going on here?" It ends up being a first lieutenant from some other unit. And he was like shaking in his boots. And he's like, "Man, what are you doing? Firing at us. I captured this vehicle." I go, "And what was the instruction when you captured the vehicle?" And he's like, "Put a VS-17 orange panel on it." And I go, "Let's take a look at that vehicle right there." I go, "Does that have a panel?" And he's like, "No." So I took a panel that I'd carried out, kind of shoved it in his chest, and I said, "Why don't you put that on there, and good luck the rest of the day."
Put the orange panel on.
Why don't you put that orange panel on to save yourself some trouble down the road? Maybe the next unit won't be as friendly to fire a warning shot.
That was a little whoopsie.
That was a little whoopsie. But we all had whoopsies. No one's perfect. And so the last story I have shared on Facebook before, and this one's kind of personal to me, and involves two soldiers, Sergeant Hatcher and Corporal Wright. Corporal Wright I hadn't met. Sergeant Hatcher I did, and it was on the first night of the ceasefire. So, again, there are folks that have been in combat for years and years. And so, 4 days is not an extreme amount of time, but, it's enough time that if you haven't slept and you haven't been eating, you're tired, right? Yeah. It's like 4 days of playing in the Super Bowl kind of. And so we were stopped to establish a defensive perimeter for the night. And sometimes when you're doing that, you have to coordinate with another unit so that there's kind of no gap in your defenses, right? It takes about a half hour. It's coordinating fields of fire and making sure everyone's got the right signals and passcodes and things of that nature. And
not taking anything for granted.
Not taking anything for granted. And it's not like your computer passcodes, right? These are things that you have to mentally remember, right? And everyone has to know what the password and the challenge is. And so it's late, I'm tired, and I know there's this other unit to our right, and I'm kind of like, we're probably good. And here comes this soldier walking up to me in the middle of the night, and he's looking for the leader in charge, and his name is Sergeant Hatcher. And he's like, "Hey, sir, how are you?" And I'm like, "Good." And he goes, "What do you think? We should probably set up these coordinations." And I was like, we're probably good, And he said,
"We got this.
We got this. We know what we're doing.
We know everything."
Because I'm tired and I just want to go to bed. And he's like, "Sir, we would both feel," he kind of took it like we would both feel, not you would feel really bad if things went south and we didn't spend this 30 minutes making sure we got it down pat. And I was like, "You know what, Sergeant, you're right." And so that's what we did. We spent the next 30 minutes or so kind of coordinating between the two units. And, I thanked him at the end, and he walked away. So nothing, uneventful night. We wake up the next day. We all have our missions to kind of do different things. And we're out guarding some other road, looking for prisoners and equipment. And Sergeant Hatcher and his unit go to guard like an ammunition dump. And I guess someone got the bright idea to start blowing up ammunition so the Iraqis wouldn't have it when we left. And we weren't what are called ordnance soldiers. We're infantry soldiers. And we get rid of the ammunition. They started burning it. And so all of a sudden, there was a terrible explosion in this ammunition dump because we're, I guess, not burning things kind of the right way, or something went wrong. And Corporal Wright gets hit by that kind of shrapnel. Exactly, shrapnel. And Sergeant Hatcher immediately goes and runs to try to pull him out of that danger zone into safety. There's a secondary explosion, and Sergeant Hatcher goes down. And then there was I think his name was Major Burgoyne, Dan Burgoyne, if I recall, and he ran in to try to grab both of them, and a third explosion hit. So they all ended up being hit by the shrapnel. And unfortunately, Sergeant Hatcher and Corporal Wright didn't make it. So they were the two fatalities of our battalion kind of during that time. And I remember to this day, I remember it like yesterday, the next day, we all lined up in a formation. There was probably 800 of us, and they did the thing where you kind of honor the dead, where you put their boots on the ground and you put their weapon upside down with their bayonet in the ground and their helmet on top. And we had taps and all that. But, you know, to this day, many times I wake up and I think about doing the right thing, and how Sergeant Hatcher told me a valuable lesson that day, that, you know, you could always take shortcuts, and sometimes it seems like it's the easy way out. What he gave me was kind of the gift of, hey, do everything you can as best you can, 100%. And if not for him doing my mission that day and me doing his, you know, who knows where I'd be today. Right. So it's kind of crazy the way these things work out. And I remember clearly when I heard over the radio, they announced those two fatalities, you know, how sad I was that, you know, I was probably one of the last people he talked to.
Wow. Well, he certainly left his imprint on you in your heart for the rest of your life. So.
He sure did. And I know there's still some fundraising efforts for their families that are ongoing. So Sergeant Hatcher and Corporal Wright, and we'll see if we can find a link to that
we'll add that in the show notes.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Well, everyone, we're wishing you a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We hope that you will remember the soldiers who have lost their lives for our safety and freedom. And thank you for your service, and all of our other soldiers for their service as well.
Thanks, my love. And I would just say, you know what, if you happen to see a soldier in uniform this weekend, you know, I usually say kiss or hug a soldier, and we can't do that. But you know what, give them a nice bow or give them a salute, and tell them how much you appreciate them. And we look forward to maybe doing this around Veterans Day and thanking all of our veterans as well.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We would love it if you would rate and review and share this podcast with others. Juan and I enjoy doing it so much together, and we love hearing from you. So if you have any comments or thoughts to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Did you know you can now upgrade to premium listenership to hear the podcast without any ads? We'll also give you a shout out on the show. Plus, you get access to bonus episodes. Simply tap the website link in our show description and get premium access in a few easy clicks.